The times that we're living in are, depending on how you frame it, some of the most interesting times geopolitically and economically that we have ever seen. And depending on where you live in this geopolitical landscape depends on your purview and your perspective of what is happening, how it's happening, and where you probably can maintain a level of normalcy despite it all. And if I'm being honest, America isn't it, right? There's no peace. There's no peace. The political environment is chaotic. The racial environment is chaotic. The economic environment is intense and growing intense. Cost of living. And while this is the case in many other countries, the continent of Africa is seeing a resurgence that, the people that are here have predicted, and the people that are invested in its growth are predicting. And so there are 5 trends that I'm noticing economically that are happening here on the continent of Africa around business that you want to pay attention to if you have a desire to do business here on the continent of Africa or with the continent of Africa. Welcome to the channel. My name is Ashley. On my channel, Ashley in Africa, I talk about doing business and living here on the continent of Africa, specifically here in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I want to talk about these trends that I'm seeing, as well as other people that share content on YouTube. I'm referring to a video that my digital mentor, Dr. Hartnett, posted earlier this month. And there were some trends that I absolutely agree with her on, and there were also some trends that I'm seeing in the Southern African region that I'm really excited to share. So if this content is interesting to you, please be sure to like this video, share it with someone else who finds value in it, and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. I think less than 40% of you guys are subscribed to the channel that are watching the content. Either way, I appreciate you, but subscribing really helps. It helps me to get new partners. It helps me to up level the production of the content, which is happening, but I need your support. And in your support, I need you to subscribe and share this video. I'm also the founder of Africa Investors Academy, a community of entrepreneurs and investors that are building businesses. And I'm teaching them how to build their businesses location independently, sharing content on YouTube like I'm talking to you guys, right? So like this video, share it, subscribe, and if you are interested in this type of content, stay tuned and learn more, okay? So if you're familiar with Google Trends, I use Google Trends a lot when I'm doing my research, as well as just making sure that I have an understanding on the pulse of what is happening geopolitically and diplomatically, right? And really what people are searching. And, the irony is that as Americans living in America, you can be very consumed with only what is happening inside your borders. And thus you have no clue of what's going on globally. And the perspective that you do have is a very American view. So it's often skewed and it's not, sometimes it's not real. And so Google Trends allows me to look at what's happening and where it is happening. And so this is not a sponsored post, but when I Google on Google Trends, doing business in Africa, the top countries that show up are the UK, Australia, Russia, India, and the US. And US is the last of those countries. And it pops up and down. I do think that the resurgence of doing business in Africa has grown on the heels of just the economic shift happening and the migration, right? So media articles are coming out here in South Africa talking about the immigration trends that are happening in this country that are contributing greatly to the South African economy. But I think that by America being there on the bottom of that search, again, this tells me a lot about the purview and like the long-term strategic planning of business growth and strategy that may or may not be happening in the US. And so these are some trends that I want to just share with you because if you have a desire to do business and on the continent of Africa, these trends matter. And the first trend that I want to share with you is the sense of urgency is picking up. new export markets, land, and the desire to have a level of peace. People are looking for peace today. And if they can't find it, they're willing to go for it. Social media has opened the doors, the curtains, pulled them back, the windows and the highways and byways to see that Africa is not what they told us it was. It's not. As I'm looking out of my window, I'm looking at a very busy business complex of the top advertising agency or a top consulting agency. I'm not sure what it is, but it's busy. It's the city. There's business happening and people are coming here, and Dabas, which are conferences, are happening. People are getting to business. The sense of urgency is picking up. It's not this open market, you know, like it was even 3 years ago. And I know people are saying that from 10 years ago. Granted, there is still very much opportunity. Of course, I am in South Africa, which is one of the most developed countries on the continent, in the heart of Johannesburg, which is literally the launch pad for doing business here on the continent of Africa, which is why I am here very strategically. But that sense of urgency around, you know, logistics, best practices, funding, which we're going to talk about, just policy, implementation, regulation, like these things are happening at a rapid pace because a sense of urgency is picking up for the continent of Africa to retain its wealth, to no longer just be a raw materials exporter, to be a value add exporter, distributor, and manufacturer, right? So this sense of urgency I'm noticing like now that I didn't necessarily notice a year ago, that I also didn't notice 2 years ago, right? So there's a sense of urgency picking up, and you want to be a part of that. The next thing is alternative funding. So, you know, people talk a lot about in the US not being able to get access to capital if you're a Black business owner, African business owner, here as well on the continent. But the way funding is structured and set up here, and the ways that funding is offered, specifically here in South Africa, it's very alternative. There's a lot of different ways to get access to money, to get access to loans. Now, is it all the most conventional, maybe the most, you know, can't think of the word, but it's probably not the best options, but there's alternative funding, microloans, you know, small business funds, incubators, banks that are doing, you know, traditional savings accounts. Like there are all types of non-traditional financial models and financial institutions coming into the continent to say, okay, we want to invest in your project, we want to invest in your business, we want to buy your business, and the West can't even compete with that, right? Going to a bank to get funding in the US is like, absolutely not, you know, for most small businesses versus what it's looking like here and what it's evolving to. Is it perfect? No, but saying all of that, that there is a landscape, there is a huge landscape and opportunity for alternative funding that is happening here on the continent. So when people are looking for funding, I don't recommend that diasporans come to the continent looking for funding, but if you build something and over time you create a level of traction, it's not necessarily unlikely that you may pick up the eyes of an alternative lending partner to support you in your projects and developments. And if that might be you in the West looking to create an alternative fund, you know, something like a hedge fund, an angel fund, there's huge opportunity here because people are looking for that, businesses are looking for that, and there are so many income producing assets that are ready to produce that income and those returns for your funding source. So that is a huge trend that I'm seeing. I saw it for sure last year, but now I'm just seeing a lot of different of these businesses popping up, and you know, more and more. So it's less important to necessarily have a name and recognition as much as it is to have practices, to be able to be sourced, to be able to be vetted, and to actually have, proof of funds available for investing. So that's been really exciting to see. And while you have this kind of traditional European funding slowing down, like, the French or the Spanish or the Portuguese, which they are still very present, but there is this kind of a tightening of the belt because the post-colonial effects of their presence has, created a shift, right? So you've got some of those folks pulling out, but then you've got other people pulling in, individual investors, accredited investors, family funds, family offices, diaspora, and other Africans on the continent that are also saying, hey, I live in South Africa, I'm gonna invest in Nigeria. I live in Nigeria, I wanna invest in Rwanda and Tanzania. I live in Tanzania, I want to invest in Mauritius, right? So you have a lot of Africans that are starting to cross borders and hedge their loss, hedge their investments, mitigate certain risks by investing in smaller developing countries and other developing countries on the continent of Africa. So what was that? Number 3? Okay. Is this content resonating? Is it helpful? Please be sure to like it and share it with someone who would also find value. And if you have a desire and you're really into construction, development, engineering, electrician, plumbing, real estate, construction, tourism, financial services, marketing, events, and hospitality, these are some of the industries that are like top, right? I'd say tourism, marketing, meeting and events, and hospitality tend to be the lowest barriers to entry, where real estate and construction, financial services is a bit heavier on the top, but these are the top industries that we're seeing growth in. With social media opening the eyes of people all over the world, tourism has just boomed. Cape Town, South Africa saw more traffic at its airport in December than ever in the history of that airport. And it makes sense because people are sharing their experience here on the continent of Africa. It is not what they told us it was. It is luxury, honey. It is luxury. Africa is all things luxury. And whether you're in Namibia, South Africa, Sierra Leone, Zanzibar, Ghana, Morocco, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Madagascar, there is luxury, peace, nature, culture to be explored and to be found here on the continent of Africa. And so people that are in those industries around tourism, hospitality, meeting and events are gonna see a huge influx and boost of business, especially because the cost of having such experiences in the West and other parts of Europe, Europe is the West, but in the West is increasing. So people are exploring new terrain, and Africa is the place to have that experience. So really excited for those industries. And if you have a business or have a desire to build a business in the tourism, hospitality, meeting and events space, also agricultural exports, also content creation, and personal and professional development, which is around the meeting and events, that is the core group of entrepreneurs that we work with in the Africa Investors Academy. So if you have an interest and want to learn more, click the link in the description so that you can access our free 6-figure guide on the top businesses on the continent of Africa, because y'all have been downloading that and I'm so happy that it's helpful. The amount of downloads that I got this month, it's nearing 200 compared to previous months of like 60. So people have an interest. You guys have an interest. That urgency is picking up. You definitely want to be in community of people with like minds, building things, getting access to vetted experts who have been on the ground, doing their thing, doing business, and can direct you and point you in the right direction. If you have a desire, we'd love to have you in the academy. And the last thing is intercontinentally, right? Which was one of my main missions for moving to the continent and really being a catalyst for intercontinental trade is picking up. So as I mentioned, you have people already crossing borders, and they have been for some time, but we're seeing just an increase in that, where intercontinentally, things like the African Continental Free Trade Area, as well as AGOA, are making it so that, you know, value added products, manufacturing things, people utilizing and not importing raw goods from other countries, because we don't need to here on the continent. We have everything. It's picking up, and it's happening intercontinentally across African borders. And that is what we love, 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 love to see. And if you want to be a part of that, well, you've got to be here on the ground on the continent of Africa to build and take advantage of most of these 2024 Africa business trends. So I hope you found value in this video. If you did, please like it, again, share it, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to join us in the Africa Investors Academy, we would love to have you. The link is in the description below. At the very least, you'll get access to our 6-figure business guide for 6-figure businesses in Africa, the top 10. And you'll get my emails with some insider data trends and stories that I share with only that community. So until the next time, I'll see you soon.